Yo, what's going on, you guys? Happy Halloween. And I told you guys, if y'all got that other video to 500 likes, I would do a part 2. And y'all kind of went crazy on that. So, of course, I'm going to bless y'all with another Fnaf video. Let's see if we can get this video to 500 likes again. That will be amazing. And also, if we do, I would love to do more things of Five Nights at Freddy's. So, you guys, please comment down below, what should I watch next? And whatever get the most attention will be the one that be getting reacted to. Also, got a Discord, too, if you guys are interested. Link down below in the description and in the comments. I have a Fnaf section so you guys can talk about all the Five Nights at Freddy's you want. And now we are getting to part 2 of this crazy ass timeline because the rise of Afton, holy shit. So many twists I did not expect. And been wanted to ask, is the movie and game lore is different? Because why is William's daughter still alive in the movie? I don't know, I'm just asking.
Welcome to Game Theory and page 20 of our final FNAF timeline. This is getting ridiculous.
Page 20 is insane.
William Afton's drinks. One night in a fit of rage, he lashes out against Henry's young daughter Charlie, his first murder. This moment becomes the first down murder gives Afton a taste for blood, resulting in the deaths of 10 more children across 2 different pizzerias. Those children go on to
he was really catching bodies.
Afton his still living inside their walls. What he didn't account for though were the ghosts, forcing him to pay for the sins of his past. When last we left him, William was spring locked, bleeding to death behind a secret wall. Gone, but
really left for dead for 30 years is such a long
Today
time.
We're finishing up our story, wrapping up the Afton era. Over the next 6 pages,
so there's
our focus
still more of the Afton era.
I don't really think there's gonna be much in between on that one. Anyway, without any further ado, let's cover a chunk of the timeline that's a lot less controversial. Let's meet Mike.
Mike.
It's not like Michael and his father were close, far from it. But as a household of 2 suffering men coping with years of tragedy and loss, there was at least some element of communication between the 2 of them. They were united by
at least know where each other at.
This time though, things felt different. William had left nothing. His absence was longer. There were no check-ins, no updates, just silence.
Damn, we really left him for 30 years,
if there was one
dude.
thing Michael knew about his chest, and as such, William had prepared him in the event that something like this ever happened. Normally, his father kept his home office locked, but in the event of an unexpected, prolonged absence, Michael had been instructed to enter his father's office and look behind an empty set of shelves mounted in the corner of the room. Rolling his eyes, Michael entered the office. Never fully understood how William was able to spend so many hours of his days
he never expected to do this.
Just expecting to find an emergency contact list, a family safety deposit box. But what he actually found there was completely unexpected.
What?
Where you said it would be.
The shelf swung open and revealed a giant industrial elevator, one that led straight down into an underground bunker. But that was impossible. Hidden inside his childhood home was a secret entrance to an enormous underground science
actually gave him access to that.
Seriously, it didn't make any sense.
Really? Even he thought it didn't make any sense.
Lost, especially after that first location had to be closed prematurely due to the gas leaks. After that day, father really did seem to
can't have any
change,
explosions.
to lose himself.
Oh my god, bro, it's so ass, bro. I don't have any ad blocker.
Back way into the facility, one that required crawling through vents to navigate. His father had been working here, but in secret. Why? And that's when he found her. At the end of the facility, Circus Baby. His father's pride and joy. Except this wasn't just a robot. She was alive somehow. And not only was she alive, she also felt familiar.
There is something bad inside of me.
Is he gonna feel that his sister's spirit?
His sister? William's baby girl? But how? Why? What was this place?
Oh my god, I know that is freaking him out.
Outpainters, voice mimicking, parental tracking. And was that a child in Freddy's stomach? Was his father collecting and experimenting on kids? Were all the rumors that he'd heard throughout his past actually true? That the animatronics came to life at night, that there were murders done and all he'd been experimented on too? Tears stung in his eyes as anger, fear, and confusion filled his body. His father's secrets were pouring out. William wasn't just a lame, overworked father.
Just
he was
laid
a
it all out on him.
Thinking human heads on poles staring back at him. Green eyes, his sister. Blue eyes, his brother. Closed eyes, his mom. All just staring, expecting to be human. William was working.
I must have forgot what happened to his mom last part.
Were those meant to be his sister? A replacement for her? A clone? Was William building clones of his sister? They seemed to know him, after all.
What the hell?
He always did have a bit of a resemblance to his father. Michael's mind reeled as the reality of his world crumbled to dust. No, he had to get them out of there. If this really was his sister, heck, if any of these things were human,
how you gonna get them out of there, though?
He would lead them. He would protect them. And finally, he would be able to forgive himself for the killing of his brother so many years.
Michael McCall is fighting for American workers and to strengthen our military.
Did they really just put an ad right there? Oh my god, bro.
You are in the scooping room now. The scooper only hurts for a moment.
Scooper?
What just happened?
Rendering the magical silver metal inside useless. In reality, prior to getting himself spring-locked and put behind the wall, William's methods had become increasingly sophisticated, with a mechanized arm.
No, what happened to Mike, bro?
Michael was gonna be the hero to help these animatronics, all right. He was gonna help the haunted tubes and wires of these animatronics escape, just not in the way that he anticipated. His sister had lied to him, another game of pretend. The scooper plowed forward, digging its extraction arm into his body. As he heard his bones rip into his flesh, Michael blacked out.
But something is wrong with me. I should be dead, but I'm not.
For the next several months, Michael's life was not his own. He was forced to comply with the tangle of wires and spirits that lived inside of him. His body
What
felt
the
like an
hell,
overfilled balloon
bro?
begging to burst. It began to sag and discolor. He was a walking, talking, rotting corpse, alive, but wishing he wasn't. He was a puppet, a walking shell. And while he did his best to conceal his fate, there was only so much a man filled with robot spaghetti could do. The entity in his innards would eventually—
I gotta pause right quick because that was the meanest 180 I've seen in my life. Oh my god, bro. Like, William gotta be the worst father of all time. That's all I have to lay out there. Oh my god. Y'all did not tell me this part was going to get even crazier.
Flesh stank, turning him into a literal purple guy. But still, even with no bones, even with rotting purple flesh and begging to die, Michael continued to live. That silvery metal remnant injected by the
Oh,
scooper
he got
meant
the-
that he couldn't die. His anger also refused to
Oh, he got
die.
the worst
What he had
end of the
seen down there in his
stick,
sister's
bro.
location had replicants. He didn't know where his father was, but Michael knew that he was out there somewhere.
I've been living in shadows. There is only one thing left for me to do now. I'm going to come find you.
Michael had to correct for the sins of his father. He had to make things right. Michael
By
would
doing
burn
what?
Fazbear Entertainment to the ground. I mean, what else could you do when your skin was permanent? Michael's strategy was simple. He would apply for night security guard positions at the old defunct pizzeria locations. That way,
Oh
no one
my
ever had
God,
to see him
why
or
the
smell
movie
him
connections
during
is
his
getting a
shift.
little
And all
crazy
these
now.
Old, shuttered locations did need guards. Teenage vandals
Security
and squatters were always
guard?
looking wanted to work an overnight graveyard shift unless they were practically out of options. Enter Mike. One by one, he would take on the job of security guard, changing his
Is he
name
gonna
each
see his
time to
father
ensure
in
that
there?
No one was able. Sometimes he would see his brother in the form of the golden Freddy suit. It's me appearing on the walls around him. Except now, there was something else there. He was no longer alone. Another angrier presence was also in the suit, as if two spirits were forced to share the same body. And Golden Freddy would attack him. It was aggressive. Its vengeance wanted to lash out.
Realized
at
it was
anyone
two
with
different
costume,
Freddys
anyone who wore
in the
a
movie
security guard
too.
outfit. And each time at the end of his week's shift, he would then set the location on fire. Remnant can't survive high temperatures after all. So, but it would all be worth it in the end. The goal was to eventually stumble across the one location, the one job that would finally reunite him with his father. Little did Mike know that that day would come sooner than he expected. 2023, an advertisement came across Mike's TV.
2023.
Fazbear's new horror
Whoa,
attraction
what are
inspired
the
by awful
odds?
crimes that Mike applied for the job and was immediately handed the keys. Years of doing this had taught him that security guards rarely receive thorough security checks. They also liked how creepy Mike looked. They thought it was a costume, on theme for the job. What little they knew.
Hell no, that's actually him. That's crazy that they thought that he was a costume.
He received the call that he'd been waiting for years.
You're not gonna believe this. We found one. A real one.
Could this finally be him? Sure enough, there he was. William inside his
Oh
iconic
my
golden Bonnie spring
God.
suit. Only now it was green and decaying with age. There they were, a small family of— Mike had always struggled with the phantoms of his past haunting him, but now all the animatronics he'd encountered over the past months, hopping from pizzeria to pizzeria,
This is
suddenly
all
sprang
getting a
to
little
life.
creepy
Their
to
burned
see.
face, and in that moment, he felt the air around him release, like pressure being let out of a bottle. The building sighed, as if 5 spirits had finally been allowed to move on. He had the sense that his brother was a part of them. He rigged the wiring inside the building to misfire, and the dry, desiccated walls
Holy
erupted in
moly,
flames.
he actually
It
set the hole on fire.
You might think you know Snapchat, but do you really? Here's 3 things
I'm so
that you
done
might
with
not
these
know about
ads.
Snapchat.
Somehow, through sheer force of will, Afton remained. He had survived, and Mike would need to find a new way of finishing off his father. Luckily, the solution would
That
present
dude
itself
is
later that year. Not from Mike, but from
unstoppable.
another
His sick
victim that had been
ass.
left in his William had been stuck in a suit and a wall. The only person who legally could bring the franchise back was Henry, but he'd largely pulled out of the franchise franchise around the time of his father's disappearance.
Yeah, where is that man,
Surely
Henry?
this had
Where's
to be
he?
some
Where's his
kind of
location right now?
Mike.
Your special obligations under paragraph 4.
No employment contract he'd ever signed required him to keep special lookout for independently moving animatronics outside the restaurant. Now he knew something was up here. Henry was luring them all back. Like had done for years, Henry was doing the opposite. He was putting them all under the same roof. He was finishing them off for good. Mike knew this wasn't meant to be a restaurant. Took a few nights, but eventually everyone was there. His father, the puppet, the robot spaghetti that had once violated his body, and his sister, now hopelessly devoted to serve the man
everybody
that had
at
once
that
gotten her
gathering.
killed.
Darkest pit of hell has opened to swallow you whole. So don't keep the devil waiting, old friend.
And with that, it was over. The Afton legacy died with all of them trapped inside of a literal box.
All
As the flames
burnt
danced around
away.
Office, Mike fears, regrets, failures. What was this place? How did he get here? He called out into the silence.
Holy moly.
Then they started coming. Without warning, animatronics, both new and old, began to jump out at him, bite him, rip him limb from limb. The pain was immeasurable. Make it stop. Make it stop. It had been reset. There was a brief moment of quiet, and then the onslaught began again. Dozens of faces from his past all focused on him. A waking nightmare that he couldn't
Rip this
escape
shit
from. More
apart.
pain, more ripping. It was his own. And then he saw them. A group of characters he never thought he'd see again. Those janky, stolen characters that had made them. But mixed in with their obnoxious southern drawls, William heard something else. It was barely a whisper, but he could just make out the words.
He tried to release you. He tried to release us. But I'm not gonna let that happen. I will hold you here.
Yo.
I will keep you here. No matter how many times.
Back. And now they were trying to punish him, to make him suffer like he'd made them suffer. It was almost like William and Cassidy's souls had been locked together, fused by a collective rage and spite, each refusing to move on.
That's
While Cassidy was so focused on taking
insane.
revenge, they the downfall for so many others. They kept William alive. Even though fire should
That's
have
what I'm
destroyed
trying
the
to make
remnant
out,
that was
bro. They're
coursing
trying to
through
keep
his
this
being,
man alive,
Cassidy
make him
kept William
suffer.
breathing strong. His soul so powerful that he managed to put a part of himself inside the circuitry that housed the spring-locked suit. And there, his consciousness lay, inside a single circuit board, waiting for someone to find him. And so a bit of a shorter chunk, but an important
why
one
you
as we
gonna
shift
cut it off like
perspectives.
that?
Mike,
I was
having
getting
much
so
to explain, I
invested.
didn't want to rush that I was vague about the dates, and there's a good reason for that. I don't know them. There is no good way for me to make them fit in. Here's what I
mean, it is that
We know with
complicated.
high amount of search. You'll also notice how the character encyclopedia doesn't have a page for Mike Afton. This thing has a page for Chocolate Bunny Bonnie, but not Michael. Some tells
is
me
so
they don't want us to confirm
disrespectful.
how many games he thinks right across the rest of the games. In Sister Location, he failing to finish the job in Fnaf 3, he ultimately helps Henry end it all
That was
in
a weird
Fnaf
cut.
6. It is great. It is a clean narrative. There is
They
just
helped-
one
they
problem.
worked with each other? Did I
Patient
miss that,
Stevie
or-
That's when he finds
Okay,
out
I'm
about
lost,
Afton's
bro. I am
secret
so
life.
lost. I am
It's
so
also when he's gonna
sorry, you
start to smell,
guys.
'cause, you know, free favorite really be. And as
Okay,
always, my
look
friends,
like we gotta
remember,
go
it's all
head
just a
on to the
theory.
finale. I feel like I was confused at a couple parts in this video, but we still gonna lock in for this finale though. I said it's only about like 15% that I am confused on. Good thing I'm gonna rewatch after all of this. The ultimate timeline finale, a family rebuilt. This is gonna be a little crazy.
Internet. Well, part of my FNAF timeline where today we're bringing our story
I know
to a
his
close
brain
by
was
talking
so
about the
fried
most
after doing all of
complicated
this.
timeline, the part that I've been dreading most of all, the end.
And I heard this
The moment
part
when we're
was
finally forced
not
to come to some
canon
definitive
according
and
to you
difficult
guys, but I still
answers trying
wanna
to explain
watch
what
it.
the heck
Want to get the base of it. What the hell?
franchise itself as Mike and Henry figuratively and literally burn it all down.
So
Today's
they did
episode,
work
though,
together
and the
and burn the
current
whole
end of this
down. Why
franchise
didn't
is
they
instead
really
all
further
about
explain
rebirth,
that through the
return of
video,
old
except at the
characters in new
end?
form,
Unless I must have been
rebirth
that
of a
slow.
franchise entering the next era of its story. But before we
It's a
hop into the
cartoon?
timeline, Dudepin. And now, without any further ado, we finally reach the end and a new beginning to our story.
Post purple
Fazbear
guy.
Entertainment was dead. All debts had been paid. All assets redistributed. The company was outright dissolved. Even the memories of the horrors that had
I
happened
was about to
there
say,
started
so
to fade away in
everything
the public
about it is
consciousness.
dead.
People were gone too. Everyone the company had ever touched was dead and gone.
That was
Well,
so
all
dark.
except one.
Pay your child support, you deadbeats! I'm keeping the diamond
The mother?
ring. I also set the house on fire!
Clara Afton. She'd been there in the early days, back when things with William were
So
good.
she
They had a
was
perfect home,
still at
thriving business,
home,
the ideal family, but
or-
shortly after work, obsessive. She had watched him change from this irritatingly brilliant man that she had fallen in love with to a drunken monster struggling to hold himself together. And despite her trying to reach out to him in those desperate days, he was just too far gone.
This is so sad. Relax, okay.
She had to leave the relationship, and from there she largely faded into
Oh.
obscurity. A mystery from William's
So
past, a
she just
footnote in his
dipped.
history. And that was fine.
I was wondering
She
like where
wanted
she
to leave that
was
part of her
last
life behind.
part.
Freddy Fazbear again, a time defined by mistakes and broken promises. But then the paperwork started to arrive. As Fazbear Entertainment began to close as a corporate
Type of
entity,
paperwork.
suddenly her mail was flooded with notifications, requests, obligations. She had been there since the beginning, helping William in the early days of his
Do
business.
people want the
And
rights
now,
to
as a
it?
shareholder and sole living member of the Afton family, all copyrights and trademarks of both
Oh,
Afton Robotics
yeah.
and Fazbear Entertainment passed on to her. Memories of this past life that she had long left behind. Looking at the blueprints, the contracts, the memos, she felt old wounds begin to reopen. The regrets of a happy family.
She really
that had
wanted to
been
leave it
torn away
all in the
from her.
past,
William
but
had always
those
been brilliant. That's what had
mails was
attracted her to
reminded
him
her
in the
of
first
it.
place. But now, holding the paperwork that contained decades of heartbreak and trauma, she realized it was her turn. She was holding the power. This was her chance. And one thought
why she
resonated in her
look like she
head.
got that
I
evil
will
look.
Put them back together. I will put them all back together. She would be the one to rebuild this family, to rebuild the pieces of that
What
shattered
you
life, to reclaim the kids that Fazbear had
mean?
stolen from her. But how? Looking at William's work now laid out before her, she knew that he had been onto something, collecting remnant, robotic humanoids, digital conscience transference. The
No way
pieces
she
were all
got
in
added
place. They were
onto
just
all of this.
scattered,
There's no way.
fragmented.
There's
It
no
was
way.
almost like fictions. That said, there had to be a way to save it all. She just needed to put it all back together. But how? To rebuild her family, she would first need to rebuild the franchise that had stolen them away from her. With ownership over the characters, their licenses,
That's a
and
plot
technology
twist.
patents
That's a
and the
plot
Fazbear
twist. I
name,
really thought she
converted the
would just put
corporation
all this
back
shit in the
into
past.
LLC. All her businesses that are usually family owned. The irony was fitting. From there, she would need remnant, and lots of it. Remnant was the key. Clearly, in the later years of his life, William had been using Circus Baby's entertainment and dozens, hundreds of animatronics, all out there, all gathering remnant from unsuspecting customers. But
No
to do
way
that
she gonna
would
get
require
all of
help,
those.
something outside of Fazbear to do the heavy lifting. So she contacted a mid-sized delivery company, DLZ Shipping Solutions, to help build replicas of all the original animatronics. And with meal delivery apps being all the rage,
fucking
why not
way.
an animatronic delivery service? Made skins for every occasion. Chocolate Bonnies for Easter, Shamrock Freddy's for St. Patrick's Day, Dia de los Muertos Chicas.
Wow,
And
they
thus,
had
the
literally
Fazbear
every
Funtime
holiday
service
for the
Right.
animatronics.
Fazbear Funtime Service.
Don't tell me that was Markiplier.
to offer, and all the while they'd be collecting and returning the remnant back to her. In a word, it was brilliant. There was just one problem with it. No one trusted the Fazbear name. The company's brand was still mud.
That's
in the public
true,
eye.
like,
no one would want to hire
all the
animatronics
murders.
from the restaurant franchise known for murdering children. Nothing kills a party quite like the threat of death, you know. So
Sure, she
needed
gotta
to
dig
find a
that
way
out
to
of the
discredit
gutter.
stories that had come before. She needed to win back the public's affection.
Discredit the stories by,
reactivate some
like,
nostalgia for the spooky stories
what?
of their childhoods. She needed a game. Multiple games, in fact.
They lied to us. They lied to all of us. They told us that the
What?
whole point of this
A
VR game
game?
was to undo the bad PR done by a rogue indie game developer. But that's not true at all. Those indie games were designed to conceal and make light of what happened. This isn't just an attempt to rebrand. It's an elaborate cover-up.
Struggling game developers
the
were a dime a dozen online, most working on their magnum opus between shifts at the Dollar General. So
This
we
is
found
still
one.
like around
Steve just
2023,
picked him out of
right?
obscurity, as expected, delivering stupid little things with dumb generic names like Mangle's Quest, Balloon Boy's Air Adventure, Five Nights at Freddy's. Bad gameplay with even worse graphics, but hey, they got the job done. People were
So
suddenly
Five
talking about
Nights at
clues
Freddy's
inside
game
these
actually
things,
exists in
searching
that
for the hidden
universe,
lore.
bro?
They were actively making jokes about dead kids at pizzerias. Her husband's twisted history of serial murder had suddenly been reduced to a mere Nancy Drew mystery to be solved. The plan had worked. Freddy Fazbear's
I gotta play the
was
games.
suddenly
I gotta
more
play the
popular
games.
than
I
ever.
gotta
Things
play the
were going
games.
shockingly well.
Oh
Her
man, I gotta
takeover
play
and
the
reboot
game.
of the
This is
franchise was
insane.
bold. William had always been so visionary, but always thought so small scale. He was careful to a fault. Not her, though. She knew that this latest project needed to be big. It needed to be flashy. It needed to be a palace for children. A place that got people
Actually
talking and checking out
revived
the latest
the
in Fazbear
franchise.
products. So with a steady
I
supply
thought
of
that would be
remnant
near
flowing in, it
impossible.
was finally time. The stage was set. It was time to get to her real goal, literally rebuilding a family.
All she really wanted was her family back.
2035. The
Holy
first was
shit.
obvious. Crying child, her little boy, the one that was the first.
2035?
She'd seen down in his bunker that William had gotten very close to replicating artificial humans using animatronic technology. And so that's exactly what she would do. Rebuild her boy from the ground up using robotic parts. His shaggy brown hair, his favorite striped shirt, even down to small details that no one would notice, like the band-aid on his left knee. William's research had even found ways of making animatronics that could bleed and process food, making them virtually indistinguishable.
He went deep into that research. He smokes Henry when it comes to all this engineering now.
She worked down in the bowels of the Pizzaplex, giving him life, but it was one thing to build him, it was another to help him remember his identity. He died so
This
young,
is such
so
a sad story.
that there was no preserved memories for him, no documentation that she could just download into his digital brain. So bit by bit, she trained him, forcing him to remember who he was. In a corner of the room, she even made a makeshift dinner table, a reminder of their happier days. The family recreated: 2 brothers, a sister, a father, and the mother at the head of the table. The one in charge, the one in command, the one bringing all of this to fruition.
We're
But
only
his
10 minutes
progress was
in.
admittedly slow, ones and zeros, then rudimentary drawings and crude letters. But bit by bit, images of his past life started to come through. Balloons, colors, houses, bears, and faces.
His
birthday
memories was
parties,
really coming
all
back.
for me. Gregory was alive. As the robot boy embraced her, she felt a warmth that she hadn't in decades. This was the joy.
That's not her
that she
real
was working
son.
towards.
That's not her
This
real
was what
son.
it was all for. Her son, back in her arms again. The plan was working. She had to keep going. Next was William.
Holy
The family was
moly.
truly gonna be put
William
together.
next?
She
I thought you would
need
do him
She
last.
knew exactly where he was, in the ruins of that old Freddy Fazbear's pizza place where Henry had trapped him. In fact, that's specifically why she insisted on building the Pizzaplex there over the sinkhole. It was the best place to hide what her true intentions were with the entire operation. Digging through the wreckage, she found him. He was right where she thought. Seeing the putrid shell of his Springtrap suit, though, was not something she was prepared
Rotted,
for. The rotting
burnt,
corpse of William
fucked.
Afton was disgusting. Scorched flesh fused into the fur lining. Hollow black sockets where eyes once were. A smell that reeked of burned carbon.
Oh, I know, it smelled like
He was
shit.
no longer flesh. It was just the tangled sinews of a creature that was once.
That's
small.
crazy. It used to
How
look
far
like
this
that.
Brilliant man, this one. Afton was practically lifeless. The man may not have been able to die, but he was about as close as you could come, and his body would need a lot of reconstruction.
Look at how
Replacement arms
dismangled
and
it is.
Endoskeleton reinforcements
It
were the top
is.
priority. The animatronics. She'd have to see if they had any spare body parts lying around that they could steal. In the meantime, though, she threw the husk that was once her husband into a life support pod infused with aerosolized remnant to help keep him stable. But more important than recovering his body was an empty shell. Severe brain damage starts at temperatures over 108 degrees Fahrenheit. 42 degrees Celsius, and years of repeated fires had burned his brain to goo. Gone
Just
was the
melted
brilliant,
it.
frustrating
Ugh.
mind that had, unlike her darling boy Gregory, Afton had found ways to record his consciousness. Fundamentally, the brain is only a series of electrical connections after all, so why couldn't you replicate that in the form of a standard circuit board? In essence, you could create a digital consciousness. And one thing she knew about
Wait till
William
somebody
was
crack that in the
nothing
future in
without
our real
conscience.
world.
Backup plans to his backup plans. And sure enough, there it was, buried in piles of old animatronic CPUs, a record of Afton himself. But she needed someone
Am I
to
tripping or did they
Someone
mention
was
before
definitely
that
here during
that he
the night.
recorded
They
his
had within
memory?
the cl-
You acknowledge that Fazbear Entertainment is not responsible for accidental digital consciousness transference, real-world manifestations of digital characters.
She hired a new developer, Silver Parasol Games, to scan the boards and bring her husband into the system.
Oh,
And because
she
of the
just straight
immersive
be
nature of
hiring
VR, William's
everybody.
consciousness would one complication. Afton's hold wasn't as powerful as she had hoped. He wasn't able to gain complete control. The first trial run, Jeremy, was so desperate to escape from his grasp that he sliced his own face off with a paper shred. Messy. Afton's followers were like it had the potential to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Enter Vanessa. Mrs. Afton wanted a surrogate daughter. Her darling Elizabeth would have been a young woman at this point if she had lived. Clara wanted someone who wasn't Elizabeth but could be just like
Ain't
her. Could
Vanessa
she have
in the
just
movie?
rebuilt her? What could she say? William had put a lot of tools on the table for her to use, and she was planning on using them all. Plus, Elizabeth had always been so loyal to Daddy. It was time to give her a second chance.
Such a daddy's girl.
choice. And Vanessa seemed to be the perfect candidate to fill the role.
Your dad's
No
name was
way.
Bill. Your dad didn't bad in court. He manipulated you. I know your mum.
And y'all say this is not canon either.
blonde, green eyes with a fondness for flowers and the outdoors. In many ways, it was her daughter all over again. Except it wasn't just looks and personality. What really mattered was Vanessa's mind. Underconfident, coming from a broken home, motherless, able to be manipulated. Yes. She
is sick too.
Daddy.
She been sick, but damn. She is going into the trenches.
And with Vanessa, it was a 2-for-1 deal. She was getting a daughter back while also bringing her husband one step closer to reactivation.
She wanted that combo.
Vanessa was headed with Silver Parasol's collapse at the hands of the anomaly. She then had the possessed Vanessa bring the contaminated circuit boards to DLZ shipping and the Fazbear Funtime service. More glitches, more Remnant, more Afton. But it was her last move that was the best. In a true masterpiece of poetry,
was the best.
Sure, Vanessa didn't have relevant experience for the job, but when it comes directly from the CEO, does it really matter? Husband, son, daughter. A corpse, a robot, a human. All that was left was Michael. Poor, troubled Michael.
How's Michael gonna come back alive?
Self-professed protector. Well, she knew she needed him to complete the family. Something told her that the problem had already solved itself.
What?
Something had shifted when using Glamrock Freddy to excavate the buried pizza place.
I have been here before. I found myself.
No way she gonna leave her other son for dead.
Maybe it was the remnant that had coursed through Michael's veins. Maybe it was the spirit of Michael living on as a protector. But he was there, somewhere inside of Glamrock Freddy. She could feel it. And just like that, she won. She'd done it. Sure,
so it was already done. He was actually. What the hell?
We're there. Finally, all together again under one roof. The Aftons reunited. A happy ending. And that's how it could have ended. That's how it should have ended, had it not been for a few unanticipated developments.
No
for one,
shit.
Something was just... It was as though a guardian spirit of the past refused to move on. As long as her husband was around, it too would linger. Only now, it wasn't just in one body, but it was in the essence of the building itself. She had seen stories of houses built on burial grounds getting possessed by angry spirits, but she'd
heard about that shit too.
She could only assume that it was a byproduct of all the remnant they'd been collecting. From Afton's testing, she knew that both light and dark remnant existed. One of positive emotions and the other created from anguish.
I know, it was two different ones.
Perhaps this thing was an amalgamation of all the darkest parts of the pizzeria's history, a collection of the hatred still housed endoskeletons and exosuits. As long as it was left alone, it seemed to be harmless. But if any Afton
looked like a boss
got too close, it would lash out wildly. Even young Gregory, looking to punish the family, the biggest concern, that bringing the family together would have some unforeseen consequences. Gregory was normally the goodest of boys. She had literally built him that way. But lately,
goody two-shoe ass.
more and suspected his absence had to do with Glamrock Freddy's failed performance the other night when he malfunctioned live on stage, almost as though the core programming of Freddy responded to seeing this rebuilt small boy.
Saw his whole brother on stage.
Something inside of him. By bit, this boy was tearing down the empire that she'd so painstakingly built, freeing Vanessa from her mind control, destroying the remains of Afton in the basement, setting Glamrock Freddy loose. As
damn, destroy the whole family again.
One more time, she began to plot her revenge. She would have to bring them all to ruin. And there you have it, my friends, nearly a decade in the making, my Fnaf timeline for where the franchise is here in 2023.
That's where it ended?
The year of Fazbear Frights, by the way. As always, it wouldn't be right for me to finish without going over some of the more controversial takes that I just handed out.
No way, that was the end, bro.
This is Afton being the CEO of Fazbear Entertainment LLC. Here's
Her
why I went
evil
with this route. Now,
ass.
first are the person driving forward every other facet of late-stage Fnaf lore here. They're the puppet master who's hiring the indie dev. They're the ones relaunching the brand, building the Pizzaplex over the burial ground.
So it said that she relaunched
and timeline relies on this
the whole entire bread and butter.
Now, as I see it, there are two possibilities here. One, evolved at all. We already have Elizabeth running the show. It would also mean that we suddenly have two robot kids running around, which feels narratively repetitive and quite frankly kind of dumb. Now look at Mrs. Afton.
As hell.
Next to their type of character. One robot kid in Gregory, one brainwashed human in Elizabeth/Vanessa, one OG corpse in William, and one possessed animatronic in Mike. Narratively, it makes everything else cleaner. Legally, it's also the option that makes the most sense. As I call out in my narrative,
still creepy.
Have some state room. The big lore central of Security Breach, a dinner table scene with the whole family, including the mother. And not only is she there, she is at the head of that table. The position of highest honor and responsibility.
In the big chair now.
She is the one in charge, is on there, trying to stop Glitch Trap before he spreads and gets out of hand. Here's the problem with that though. If the head of Fazbear doesn't want Afton to rise again, why'd they restart the company in the first first place? Why'd they build over the FNAF 6 pizzeria? Why'd
Oh,
they
me.
go through an elaborate... It would be the most inconsistent series of actions ever, but I did want to call attention to it since it seems to be the route that the official guide is trying to steer us towards. Moving on to minor
complicated
point
as
number one, the
God.
5 developer. Here's the thing, FNAF VR opens with this line.
That's why we have recreated many of these completely fictitious scenarios.
If there's actually a VR of Five Nights at Freddy's, I would like to do that.
And inside, we see a bunch of lit up nightmare staff bot heads. Suspicious, to say the least. The channel ID
So
Fantasy
that's what those
did
are
a great
called.
feat. Gregory isn't alone in this room, but rather might be communicating with someone. A spirit, Charlie. Charlie's spirit seems to have pulled a poltergeist.
What?
Instead of controlling one thing, he even chooses the codename Dr. Rabbit for crying out loud. But obviously, by the time of security breach, Gregory is working against Burn Trap, Vanessa, and the animatronics. Why?
The
How? Well,
fuck?
it's not real memory or be reset in some way. Maybe it was Charlie talking to him in his post-it room. Maybe he hit his head. Maybe it was the connection that he made with Mike on stage.
But I
in
gotta
Glam
watch
on
the
Freddy.
cartoon or
Not
whatever
exactly
that
sure, and I don't
cutscene
think we have
is.
enough off evil on Afton's side and then switch to trying to destroy him and not knowing who he is in security breach. And with that, my friends, I'm wrapping this thing up. Congratulations, we are on
Wow.
page 40.
We are actually
22,000
at the end of the
Have I answered everything?
timeline.
No. Does everything fit cleanly? No. But does it feel like the best and most cohesive narrative for all these characters that addresses most of
kind
the
of.
evidence? Then comes the movie, whatever. My descent into madness continues. But regardless, I am
Wonder
so
if
proud of this. This
he
was
made
a
videos on
massive
those or
undertaking,
the
and I'm so proud
DLC.
of
I would
our
love to
editors
watch
with
it.
History. A game theory. Thanks for watching.
Wow, wow, wow. Oh, it looked like he actually did make a video on that. Well, but one of these two, I would love to make a part 3 on watching one of these. And that was part 2 of me watching this whole entire timeline. And dog, I think the mama coming into the mix got to be the biggest plot twist. Y'all do not understand. I really thought that she was just pushed off to the side, gone out of the picture. But nope, she did some insane things too. Anyways, if you guys haven't already, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to my channel if you would love to see more future FNAF content. Like I said in the beginning of the video, make sure you drop down in the comments what would you guys like for me to watch next. Finish the series off with this, or we can just see some recommendations from you guys, and I will allow links to be in these comments now. Anyways, I hope to see you guys next time because I really want to make more of these videos.